There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello Booktube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another Friday Reads. I did a Monday Reads or Tuesday Reads, so I didn't know if I'd have anything to say, but of course I've got a fair amount. But not so much about reading because of that mega update on January 2nd. The older I get, the more prolonged my jet lag is both ways, going to Canada and coming back. Today is kind of crunch time because for the first time I actually have a commitment. I have a student New Year's party dinner at 7:30 p.m. All week since I got back, my peak sleeping time is from about 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. I forced myself to only nap during that time for about 90 minutes yesterday, but I'm really worried that I might not be able to wake up, sleep through my alarm, or just be so incredibly groggy for this New Year's party. I'm sure I'll live. I have done lots of reading this week in and amongst my jet lag. I've had absolutely no schedule at all, no work, which has been delightful. But I've had a couple of projects that are really boring practical stuff. One of them is not so boring. I'm writing this textbook for one of my classes, the next unit. We're going to begin next week, and I had barely got a start on it, so I've made some good progress on that. And because I have to renew my work visa in the spring, that's the only time when I bother to do my income tax. I've never done my income tax on time in my life. Why? I don't get it. I know some people think I'm crazy, but I am. So I always have to do, it's a 3-year work visa, so I've always got to do 3 years of income tax in the months leading up to the stupid renewal process. So I've done a fair amount of work on that. So it reminds me of when I was in university as an undergrad, and it was finals season, and my friends and I would study in the library, and we'd go for coffee breaks, but we soon realized that we were taking 90-minute coffee breaks and studying for 15 minutes in between, so we renamed it study breaks and then coffee. And I would have to use the same naming protocol here because I do 15 minutes of income tax, you know, sorting my receipts and entering them into a spreadsheet and all that stuff. And then read for 45 minutes and then go back and do 15 minutes. So anyway, I've made enough progress that I feel not quite so panicked. But enough about all that stuff. Let's get to books. I made one bail the day after, later the same day that I posted that January 2nd video. Not going to tell you which one. And started another one that I've been dying to get to. Welcome to Lagos by Chibundo Onuzo, a Nigerian writer now living in London. I think I profiled this one on a 5-star prediction video and showed off the gorgeous cover, which is what first drew me to it. And I'm happy to say that 20 pages in, 16 to be precise, I love the writing. It's just, this is going to be a stunning free video. I think I counted how many I used in my besties worsties video. It's like 722 times, so just amazing. I love the prose. Who knows how I'll feel? It's early days, but the only other thing that I knew about her was I listened to a podcast in the spring last year, and the podcast seems to have been discontinued, but it's called For Book's Sake. I think it was a UK-based women's books podcast, and I think this was the only episode I ever listened to, but I loved it. And at the tail end of that episode, there was an interview with Chibundo Onuzo for part of this podcast's A Room of One's Own series, interviewing her about where she writes, and she said, and she has this delicious Nigerian accent, and she just sounds like a lovely person. If you look at pictures of her, I'll put up a lovely picture of her because she's just lovely, vivacious. And she said she writes in her kitchen right beside the fridge, which was really bad for her waistline, which gave me a little chuckle. And she just sounds like a lovely person, which doesn't necessarily equate to good writing, right? Because just doesn't, but the first 3 chapters of this are lovely, and it's about 2 soldiers, one who's like a commander and one who's a low-level soldier, who together desert the army because the general is committing so many atrocities. And that's as far as I got, but I think they're making their way to Lagos, which is Onuzo's hometown. I think they pick up more people and more people. I will put a link to that podcast episode in the show notes. Now, their last episode was in August, so I hope that they will revive it. Not that there aren't other wonderful similar podcasts like Kendra Winchester's. This is starting out really good. I want to talk about audio. I have to prioritize the audiobooks. I guess I don't really have to, but I want to prioritize the audiobooks that I'm listening to on TuneIn before those evaporate on January 15th. So I've got about 10 or 11 days. I've noticed a curious thing. One was kind of the flip side of the other in terms of narration, direct quotations versus just simple expository prose. The first one, this is so powerful. I just listened to this, maybe the 2nd chapter this morning, and it almost made me cry. It's really, there's an abusive mother in it, and wow, powerful. And this is, like I said before, narrated by Amar McBride, and reading it without the benefit of the audio, I think it would be very confusing because there's no quotation marks, which is not, I know a lot of people don't like the absence of quotation marks, and I quite like that, but that plus when it's the child's point of view, the grammar-free prose, makes it really confused. I think it would be really confusing for anybody to figure out, is this somebody talking or is this the narrator? And McBride does the voices so perfectly that there's absolutely no confusion when you're listening to it. But I think there would be. I mean, I'm not doing it that way, but I think there would be without the benefit of the audio. This is splendid. No, stunning's better than splendid. Oh my god. Okay. And Anthony Mara. I've made the most progress with this because it's a 300-page book that I want to finish by the 15th. And I'm not so sure about the audio. Each chapter so far has been done by a different narrator, and both of them have thick Russian accents, which I really like. I will just kind of, as an aside, say that I'm not enjoying the audio for the essay by Valeria Lucelli, because the narrator isn't Hispanic, and there's no Hispanic accent. Is that overly essentialist of me? I guess, but I think it would be better with read by the author or with somebody who has a Hispanic accent. But maybe that's just me. However, I am noticing as I follow along with the audio is quite competent, but it has occurred to me that the narrators aren't varying their intonation when they move from a direct quotation to exposition, from sentence to sentence. And I think if I was listening to the audio only, it would be very confusing. Is somebody speaking, or is this the narrator thinking aloud? And sometimes that's really, I think it's always important. So I think I do that when I read, but it's just made me curious because the Amar McBride does it so wonderfully, and then this one, it's not rendered auditorily in a way that's clear, but still good audio. And this is still not really, really good. I want to mention an article that I just scanned. It came through on Twitter this morning. Most anticipated 2018 novels, and this was an article in the Chicago Review of Books, which I don't subscribe to, but somebody I do follow retweeted it, and I'd only heard of about 3 of them, and the rest of them look so damn good, and it just made my mouth water, and it's like, oh, I'm sworn off book buying, or very much book buying, until autumn. What am I gonna do? So I put a tweet out, not to quote my own self, but saying I need a sugar daddy, but at my age all the sugar daddies are dead. But what am I gonna do? But I'll put the link to that article in the show notes, because yes, a lot of them they looked really interesting. I mean, who knows, right? But with their flashy covers, and I want them. So if you want to apply to be my sugar daddy, I'm accepting applications. Anyway, it will be very good for me to keep my book buying to an absolute minimum for several months, as I have not needed to do that since I started reading with a vengeance a couple years ago. I am going to place an order today for Ali Smith's Winter. I could get the large soft cover here in Japan, but I want the hardcover with that half-sized dust jacket to match the autumn one. So that, I think, might be it for the foreseeable future, except for really cheap ebooks. I picked up a copy of the Costas novel Winter, Reservoir 13, for $5 on iBooks the other day. So my last point is maybe the most important one. With the benefit of free time this week, I've been catching up on BookTube videos, because I couldn't really do much of that when I was home in Canada, and especially all the year-end videos. And I've had a rather deep experience as a consumer, as a viewer of some great videos. So I want to single out two and talk about what it brought up for me. And the first one was Joss over at Squibblesreads. First of all, check out her, I think it was her worst of 2017 video. I told her in the comment section, I think, it was hilarious and so well done, and she speaks so quickly, but in a way that it's perfect, and she's so, her confidence and articulateness, just wow. So I told her she should be on TV or something. She kind of poo-pooed that, but I think so. Anyway, that's not the point I wanted to make here. In her best of 2017 books, she included a handful of books that I didn't like very much, so people have different tastes, right? But the way that she talked in a, I thought, really moving way about one of her favorites, which was a book that I did not like, I think I gave it 2 or maybe 3 stars, was Chemistry by Weiki Wang, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I thought that the protagonist had a really flat personality, and her boyfriend loved her so much, and she kept wondering why did he love her so much, and that is kind of a self-creating dynamic for me, because she was really, I thought, asking me as the reader, why are you so interested in me? And I wasn't. I thought she was really boring. Okay, so that was my response, and I did it on audio without the benefit of text, and I knew that there was a sizable opinion that agreed with me, but other people loved it. But listening to Joss talk about what it meant to her personally, and then her analysis, really cogent analysis of it, just thought, that is a completely different perspective on this novel, and I'm going to reread it with that perspective in mind. It's a short little book, so it's going to be easy for me to do that, but it was just one of those, epiphany's too strong of a word, but it was just one of those aha moments, like, yes, we all have different tastes and stuff, but hearing how deeply she appreciated it and why just opened another window into it for me, and so I am going to reread that hopefully this year. So I was really felt grateful for that. And then yesterday I watched Jen over at Remembered Reads, her similarly 2017 wrap-up, and she talked about 3 novels that I didn't care for nearly as much as she did. One was In a Country of Men by Hisham Matar, a Libyan novel, and I thought the child narrator was really a weak way to tell the story, and Jen thought it was the strongest point of the novel. So we disagree on that, and that's fascinating. She didn't change my mind, and I wouldn't ever dare try to change hers, but just completely different experiences of the same book, right? But more than that, she talked about Sebastian Barry's novel that wasn't it Booker longlisted, Days Without End, and that was a 3-star read for me. There was parts of it, many things about it that I loved, but I had a lot of problems with it, and I'm not going to go through them all here, but just listening to the way that she talked about it, she had so many insights in her analysis that it just kind of made me think about the novel again. And I thought, to a certain degree, with the limited amount of brain power I have, about the things her genius brain expressed so wonderfully. But it just, again, gave me a completely different view of that book, and I'd like to reread it, because I've never been able to articulate the things I was uncomfortable with versus the things that I really loved. My reaction to the book was quite muddled. So, again, I would like to reread that at some point. So I think her favorite book of the year was Birdie by Tracy Lindbergh, which is the book that I bailed on quite early this fall. A Indigenous Canadian novel, a debut novel by Tracy Lindbergh. And I loved the protagonist, but I just felt that the structure of the novel was a dog's breakfast, and it was just kind of spinning its wheels, and just kind of a fog of this puddle of woundedness and that puddle of woundedness, and I just didn't feel like there was a narrative through line up to the point where I bailed. But yet I loved Birdie. Listening to Jen talk about it, she didn't change my mind, but I just deeply appreciated the way that she talked about it and what she loved about it. So all of that has been really rich for me in the past couple days, just in terms of how we bring what we bring to our reading. And I think we all read different books when we read the same books, and I've been thinking about that for a few years when I've disagreed so profoundly with certain reading friends about certain books. I have felt this week like being on BookTube, not just as a content provider, but as a content consumer. It's making me more porous. The reviews and the opinions that you all have are getting in and encouraging me to open to other ways of looking at books that I've already read. It's felt like kind of a New Year's feeling of just kind of openness to the universe. So now I'm going to go buy some incense and do a chant. No. It's been truly grounding and joyful for me. So that is what I wanted to say about that. Anyway, thanks for watching.